Story 1. They say rivers only take what belongs to them. But after that night, I wonder, did the water come for us, or for something darker buried beneath it? The first sound was not rain, but laughter. I woke up thinking children were playing outside my house, though it was past midnight. The laughter echoed strangely, like it was carried on the wind and twisted in the night. When I opened the window, all I saw was rain, thick sheets of it, hammering the earth, swallowing the fields. My chest tightened. It had been raining for nearly a week. I lived in Lake Hapur, a quiet farming village nestled against the river's bend. That river gave us everything: water for crops, fish for food, silt for fertile soil. We worshipped it like a god. But that night, it roared like a beast. By dawn, the ground was shivering under us. The water was higher than I had ever seen. And just after the village bell tolled in warning, a sound split the air, a cracking boom like thunder inside the earth. The riverbank had broken. The water came in one violent wave, tearing down huts like they were nothing but straw toys. People shouted, animals shrieked, and the darkness turned alive with chaos. I remember snatching my little sister Mira from her mat, clutching her to my chest and running. But where? The river was everywhere. Somehow, I scrambled onto our thatched roof, soaked and trembling, with Mira bawling against me. Around us, neighbors did the same. Families perched like drenched birds on fragile nests. Mothers clutched babies. Fathers held goats and chickens, as if saving them could anchor a world slipping away. The livestock groaned miserably, tied with ropes that cut into their skin. And then, the true horror began. From the black water below came voices, muffled, panicked cries. Some called us by name. "Help! Please! Pull me up!" I leaned forward, heart tearing, and saw shadows in the flood. An old man clutched a log, drifting towards me. His face surfaced for a moment, eyes wide. Then the current whipped him away. Everywhere was the same. Neighbors screamed, but we could not help. To leave the roof meant to vanish. So we sat, paralyzed, watching friends disappear one by one into the mud. The water swallowed all it touched: our fields, our granaries, the ancient temple bell that sank with a mournful clang, and still, above the storm, I heard laughter. At first I told myself it was imagination, but then Mira, pale and shivering, whispered, "Paya, who is laughing?" I held her tighter, afraid. She was right. Over the roar of the river, there was a high, mocking giggle, as if someone unseen found delight in our suffering. The sound didn't belong to any human voice I knew. It was too sharp, too echoing, like it came from beneath the water itself. The night stretched unbearably. Rain lashed, thunder cracked, and the endless current carried floating debris, planks, corpses of cows, faces briefly visible before sinking. My stomach screamed with hunger, but even worse was the guilt. I could only sit and watch, powerless, as people I'd grown up with were pulled under. And through it all, that eerie laughter rose and fell with the tide, taunting us. By dawn, half the village was gone. Only scattered rooftops jutted above the water like skeletal remains. Mira was weak in my arms. All she'd had was a mouthful of rain. I prayed for the relief boats, though none came. The world beyond seemed to have abandoned us. On the second night, something changed. The water became strangely calm. The storm slowed, though the river stayed bloated, swallowing our land whole. That was when I noticed shapes moving against the current. Not floating debris, but figures, half hidden under the surface. Too many to be human. Pale arms reached up, then withdrew. The laughter came again, louder this time, rising from all directions, making my blood freeze. "Don't look at them," an old woman on the next rooftop whispered to me when she saw my gaze. Her voice trembled. It was not the rain that broke the river. The river was hungry. It needed us. I could not answer. But in my heart, I knew she was right. By the third day, rescue boats arrived at last. They pulled us from the wreckage of our lives, thin and starving. But I swear, as they rowed past the drowned fields, I saw faces beneath the murky water, too many faces, floating close to the surface, smiling with jagged teeth. Even now, months later, when rain hits my roof at night, I hear it. That hideous laughter, bubbling up from the earth, reminding me nothing we build beside the river is truly ours, because the river always comes back. And when it does, it won't just take homes. It will take names, memories, entire generations. Mira says the voices in her dreams tell her the river will rise again. I'm too afraid to ask how she knows. All I can do is wait and listen. Story 2. They tell you the mountains are quiet, but that's a lie. In the mountains, the silence has weight. It presses on your skull until every thought becomes a whisper. And if you wait long enough, you realize that silence is never empty. I went up the ridge alone, thinking myself brave. The mountain range had always drawn me with its beauty. Endless pines, icy cliffs, the kind of crisp air you swear tastes purer than anywhere else. My GPS guided me at first, pinging trails like invisible breadcrumb paths. But that morning, the device flickered and died. I laughed it off. I had old-fashioned instincts, I told myself. The mountains can't fool me. But then the snowstorm came. It came fast. Clouds closed in, a dull gray curtain, and suddenly the world was swallowed. Snow pelted my face so hard I could barely see. The trail was gone within minutes, wiped clean, and the pines blurred into a sea of identical shapes. I tried to backtrack, but there was no back anymore, just white, endless, suffocating white. Then I slipped. My boot hit an icy ledge, and I fell. Not a long fall, but long enough for my knee to twist. The pain was sharp, making every step a slow torture. I dragged myself with my stick, limping, trying to ignore the fear crawling behind my ribs. Night came like ink. The temperature fell below anything I had prepared for. My hands trembled as I fumbled with my pack. I had some dried food, a little fuel, but not enough. I tried to make a fire, but the snow swallowed my sparks. The forest around me moaned beneath the wind, and somewhere between the gusts, I heard something else. A howl. Wolves, I thought. The sound carried from deep within the trees. At first it was far, but as the night stretched, it grew closer, sharper, like they were circling. I pressed my back against a frozen tree and whispered to myself that they wouldn't come near fire. But I had no fire. The hours dragged. The wind screamed, my body stiffened, and every time I blinked, I thought I saw shadows flitting between the trees, too large, too human to be wolves. By the second day, my food was half gone. My water bottle froze solid. I broke the ice with my teeth, cutting my gums to drink. My knee throbbed. Walking was unbearable now. I crawled at times, leaving streaks in the snow. I shouted for help until my throat burned, but the only reply was the wind and the laughter. At first, I thought it was the storm whistling through the trees, but then I heard it clearly, something laughing, faint and mocking, high-pitched, echoing strangely. I froze, ears straining. It wasn't human, I told myself. Couldn't be. No one was here. But that night, as I curled beneath a fallen trunk, teeth chattering, I heard footsteps in the snow, soft, careful. They came closer and closer until they halted right behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. My body refused. I told myself it was a deer, maybe, searching for food. But deer don't laugh. The sound was right at my ear, a low, breathy giggle that made my skin crawl. Then silence. The kind of silence that feels like a hand covering your mouth. When I finally dared to look, nothing was there, just endless white. By the third day, exhaustion spread through me like poison. My fingers were blackening at the tips, frostbite. My food nearly gone. The forest was quieter now, too quiet. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. I stumbled forward, delirious, and that's when I saw them. Figures in the distance, at first just shadows against the snow. I thought rescue had come, tears burning my eyes. I shouted, waved my arms. The figures turned their heads toward me all at once, and I realized they weren't wearing rescue uniforms. They weren't wearing anything at all. Pale, long-limbed, their eyes nothing but hollow pits. They stood unnaturally tall among the trees, half hidden by flurries, watching me without movement. I took a step back. Pain screamed in my leg, and I collapsed. When I looked up again, the forest was empty. Gone. But I knew they were still out there. That night, they came closer. I heard them circling, their heavy breaths staining the freezing air. They whispered my name between the howls, soft as snowflakes. Each time I closed my eyes, I felt them inch nearer. My pack was empty, my strength failing. On the fourth morning, sunlight broke the clouds, dazzling on the snow. I dragged myself up, praying I'd find the trail. I staggered, delirious, and there it was ahead. A figure, wrapped in bright orange, waving. A rescuer. I laughed with relief and stumbled forward, but then I froze. It wasn't a rescuer. The figure's smile was impossibly wide. Its hand, raised in greeting, had too many fingers. The laugh, oh God, the same laugh, echoed all around me. I don't remember falling, but I know the snow swallowed me. And as I lay staring up at the endless white sky, I realized the silence wasn't silence at all. It was breathing. Slow. Patient. Waiting for me to become part of the mountain. Story 3. Have you ever listened to silence so heavy it feels alive? That's what war leaves behind. Not just screams or gunshots, but a silence that waits in the corners, thick, patient, and choking. In that silence, even your own breath feels too loud, as if revealing your location to something lurking just outside. I never thought my city could bleed. It had always been a roaring place, markets buzzing, children racing between stalls, vendors calling out spices and sweets. The air once smelled of roasted bread and diesel fumes. Now it reeks of smoke and ash. The first night the bombs fell, the sky tore open like a wound. Buildings toppled, glass shattered, and fire licked the alleys we once played in. My husband, Rafiq, pulled me and our little boy Arman into the basement of our building. Just a small concrete room, no windows, only one dangling bulb that flickered half dead. That basement became our home, our world, and our grave in waiting. Every night since, the earth has shaken with explosions. Sometimes close, sometimes distant. Sometimes so close, I thought the building would sink into dust and bury us alive. Arman asks the same question each night, his small voice trembling against the rumbling walls. Baba, when will it end? Neither Rafiq nor I can answer. We look at each other in the dim light, and silence is the only reply. Silence and the sound of distant sirens that never come for us. Water is gone. Food reduced to scraps of stale bread and a few tins. I ration what we eat, but my stomach claws inside me, reminding me I am failing my child. His cheeks are hollow now, and I hate myself for counting each rib as he sleeps. The shelling comes at random, like a monster's heartbeat. Days blur into nights. Our fear grows heavier than hunger. I try to close my eyes, but the noises above keep dragging me back. Boots on broken concrete, voices barking in a language not our own, doors splintering open, screams cut short. We don't go up anymore. We know patrols stalk the streets. And yet sometimes I swear I hear footsteps descending toward us even when no one is there. Slow steps, dragging, heavy. I hold Rafiq's hand in the dark when it happens, and neither of us breathes. The steps always stop just before the last stare. Then silence again. That crushing silence. On the fifth night, something changed. The bombing paused, though the stillness was worse. It felt unnatural, like the city was holding its breath. In that quiet, we began to hear knocking. Soft at first, irregular. Not from the door, but from the walls. Faint thuds, as if someone or something was crawling inside the concrete. Armand whispered, "Mama, someone's here." I hushed him, but I couldn't deny it. The knocks grew clearer. Scratch, knock, scratch, knock. As though invisible hands searched for a way into our hiding place, Rafik told me it was just my mind playing tricks in the silence. But his eyes betrayed fear. He heard it too. That night, I dreamt of the city streets. But they weren't rubble anymore. They were empty highways stretching forever, lined with buildings without doors. Windows gaped black like eye sockets. In the distance, I saw figures standing still, watching me. When I woke, my lips tasted of dust, and I realized the scratching sound hadn't been a dream. The sixth night, the water container tipped empty. Armand begged for a sip, but there was nothing left. His voice was dry, fragile. I held him to my chest as his tiny heartbeat thudded faster than bombs above. The scratching in the walls swelled into a low moan, like the building itself was in pain. My mind cracked under the weight of it. Rafik went upstairs, desperate for water. I begged him not to, but he kissed my hand and climbed the stairs anyway. I waited, clutching Armand, counting every tick of that trembling light bulb. Minutes became an eternity. Then I heard him scream, just one sharp, guttural sound, cut off by silence. Then nothing. No boots, no voices, no husband. Hours passed, or maybe days. I don't know. The bulb finally flickered out, leaving us in blackness. Armand wept quietly until he too fell into silence, his breath shallow against my chest. The scratching hasn't stopped. In fact, it's closer now. I can feel the vibrations travel into the floor where I lie. Whatever is in these walls, it's hungry. War opened cracks in this city, and something else has slithered through. Sometimes I think I hear Rafik's voice in the dark, whispering from beyond the wall. "Open! Let me in!" I don't answer. I hold my boy tighter, praying the silence will spare him. But deep inside, I know. We're not alone in this basement. We never were. And soon, the walls will break like the streets above. Story 4. They said children can't haunt the living, that ghosts are only made after death. But I know that's not true, because I was haunted long before I died. I grew up in a place nobody wanted to remember. The building had once been called St. Mary's Orphanage, but even the priests who named it were long gone. What remained was a sagging gray house where walls wept water stains, roofs leaked streams over our thin mattresses, and the air smelled of mold and sickness. There were 20 of us children crowded in that place, with only 3 women to look after us. They weren't cruel exactly, but they weren't kind either. We were more chores than humans. They gave us stale bread, watery soup with floating scraps, and called it enough. If we were sick, we were told to sleep it off. Sleep was never easy. The cold crept into our bones at night, even when we huddled close together for warmth. And the ceilings groaned. The house had a voice of its own, creaks, sighs, knocks in the walls. The younger ones said it was ghosts walking at night. We older ones laughed to be brave, but deep down, we wondered. I remember lying there with my closest friend, Rena, whispering stories to each other so the shadows wouldn't crush us. She asked once, "Do you think anyone will ever come for us?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her someday, but the truth sat heavy in my chest, and all I said was, "Maybe tomorrow, maybe." Of course, nobody ever came. The worst part was hunger. Hunger made us desperate, mean. I once saw 2 boys fight over a hard crust of bread until their noses bled. The caretakers pretended not to see. When my stomach hurt too much to sleep, I listened to the house again. The endless dripping from the broken roof, the cracks splitting wider in the plaster, and sometimes the whispers. Whispers that didn't belong to us. They came from the deserted west wing of the building, the part barred off because the ceiling there had collapsed. Nobody lived in that section, and yet, at night, voices slipped through the walls, low, childlike murmurs, too many to count. Sometimes they cried, sometimes they laughed a hollow, breathless laugh like someone drowning in the dark. We dared each other to go there once. Rena and I, sneaking past the broken door. The hallway smelled stale, like dust mixed with rot. The wallpaper peeled like skin. And there, in faint moonlight leaking through holes in the roof, I swore I saw small shapes crouched along the corridor. Not quite children, too thin, too sharp, their heads tilted at impossible angles. They were only there for a blink, and then shadows swallowed them. We ran, never speaking of it again. But after that night, the whispers grew louder by our dormitory. They never seemed to bother the adults, only us. Maybe because the house knew we were already half forgotten. Illness came next. It always did. Rena got a cough one winter, nothing more. But it worsened until her whole small body shook, each breath rattling like something broken inside her. The women gave her wet cloths and muttered prayers, but no doctor ever came. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, though mine shook nearly as bad. One night, while the younger one slept, she whispered, "I can hear them." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "The others, in the walls, they're calling me." I begged her not to listen. I told her to stay, but her lips curved into a tired smile and she said, "Maybe they'll want me if no one else does." And the next morning, she was gone. The blanket pulled over her still face. They took her away, but not to a graveyard. I never saw them bury her. I wonder even now if the house simply kept her for itself. Her voice joined the night whispers soon after. I heard her laugh once in the dark, a soft, gurgling sound outside the dormitory door. I cried into my pillow, trying not to let the others know. One by one, others vanished too. Some carried away by fever, others just fading into shadows. The orphanage consumed us like a hungry mouth. And the worst horror wasn't that people died. It was that no one outside noticed, no one sent letters, no officials checked. We could vanish from the earth, and the world would keep turning, markets buzzing, laughter spilling into the streets. We were invisible, forgotten children in a rotting house. And I think that's why the house loved us, because we already belonged to the silence. Now I tell this from the other side of its walls, where whispers live on forever. I am no longer hungry, no longer cold, but I am not free. None of us are. At night, our shadows still bend along the orphanage halls, waiting for new children to arrive, eager to be remembered, if only by the house. So if you ever pass a broken building filled with whispers, don't step inside. Don't look at the peeling walls or listen too hard. Because once the house hears your voice, it will never let you leave. Story 5. People think the earth is silent. They think it just lies there, heavy and still. But I've worked beneath it all my life, and I know the truth. The earth whispers, it moans, it listens, and when it finally decides to close around you, you understand. It is alive, and it is hungry. That day started like any other. We descended into the mine before dawn, headlamps cutting slits through the black, hammers and drills echoing through the tunnels. The air down there was, as it always was, thick, metallic, damp with sweat. I'd grown used to the claustrophobia, the way the rock pressed in as if reminding you you'd never really escape. But by noon, the air shifted. The tunnels shuddered. At first, we thought it was just blasting from another shaft. Then came the deafening crack, the ceiling split. Dust stormed down in waves. I dropped to the ground, choking as rock slammed into rock, drowning the shouts of men around me. The lamps blurred in the haze. I heard screams, sharp, ragged, then nothing but the roar of collapsing earth. When the sound finally died, I opened my eyes to a darkness deeper than I'd ever known. My lamp flickered weakly, dust choking every breath. Around me, a few men groaned, calling names through coughs. 10 of us had been working that section. Only 6 answered. We were sealed in. Hours blurred as we tried to settle, huddling in a pocket of space spared by the collapse. We calculated quickly. A few weak lamps, 1 water flask passed between us, rations scattered who knows where. Rescue crews would come, wouldn't they? It was only a matter of waiting. But waiting is worse than working. Waiting turns time into a knife. The air grew heavier, thinner, each breath reminding us the oxygen was dwindling. And as the silence deepened, the earth began to speak again. At first, it was small groans, cracks of shifting stone. Then came the echoes, unfamiliar sounds that played with our ears, bouncing around the cavern. Sometimes it was dripping water, sometimes it was a shuffle, far down a blocked shaft. A shuffle that didn't sound like rock at all. We told ourselves it was our nerves, but unease spread like sickness. On the second day, Thakur swore he saw someone down one of the dark passageways. A shadow moving, a lamp that wasn't ours. We laughed at him, though fear dulled the humor. Later that night, while half asleep against the wall, I heard it too. Soft, deliberate footfalls, not rescue, too careful, too slow. We lit our lamps, all eyes darting toward the tunnel. Nobody was there, yet the sound lingered in my skull long after it stopped. By the third day, we stopped trusting ourselves. Hunger gnawed, thirst burned, minds frayed at the edges. Rafiq started muttering to himself, whispering names none of us knew. Javed cried quietly, begging for light even though his lamp was on. I pressed my head into my knees, fighting the dizziness that comes with breathing too little oxygen. And still the noises came, scraping against stone, breathing in the tunnels. Sometimes laughter, faint, childlike, echoing through the dark. On the 4th night, or what we thought was night, I woke to find 3 of the men gone. Their lamps were left behind, still glowing faintly. We called their names, tore through the dust, but they were swallowed by the rock. Maybe they went to find a way out, someone said, but no one believed it. We knew there was nowhere to go. The next hours dragged like centuries. Faint moans echoed from the tunnels, moans that sounded very much like their voices, distorted, choked. We clutched each other tightly, but deep down, the thought was growing louder than hunger. We were not alone down here. By the 5th day, I could no longer tell what was real. Shapes slithered at the edges of the dark. Faces blinked in the stone itself. Once, I felt a hand brush my shoulder. I turned sharply. Nobody was there. The others were asleep, gaunt and pale, ribs twitching with shallow breaths. The rock shifted again that night, groaning like a beast in its sleep. And in that sound, I swear I heard words. Not human words, but something older, whispering from the depths. Stay. The walls wanted us. When rescue finally came, I didn't believe it at first. Faint drilling, muffled shouts, beams of new light cutting through a crack above us. Relief should have filled me, but it didn't. I only stared into that light as if it were a trick, another hallucination. They pulled us out, what was left of us. Reduced to 4 hollow shells of men, blinking like moles in the sun. The others never reappeared. The rescuers said the tunnels were too unstable to search. But I know the truth. The earth took them. Even now, months later, when I close my eyes at night, I hear it again. The breathing of the mind, slow, patient. Sometimes I wake to dust falling from my ceiling, whispers sliding through the cracks in my wall. The earth remembers me, and one day it will take me back. Story 6. They say the worst prison is the one inside your mind. That's a lie. The worst prison is made of walls, chains, and men who enjoy breaking what's left of your soul. I was innocent. That truth became meaningless the moment the judge's gavel slammed shut my life. They said I had taken a man's life, though on the night of the murder I was at home with my little daughter, reading her to sleep. Nobody believed me. My word was nothing against the lies stacked against me. Guilty, they declared. And just like that, the world turned its back. The van rattled as it carried me to the prison on the outskirts of the city. They called it a correctional facility, but everyone knew its real name whispered on the streets. Stonehouse, a place where even the walls seemed to rot with cruelty. The first night told me everything I needed to know. The guards sneered as they shoved me inside, their eyes shining with amusement, like hunters tossing meat into a cage. From the cells around me came shouts, whistles, curses. Faces pressed between bars grinned with yellow teeth. One voice hissed, "Fresh meat." The cell was small, concrete walls soaked in dampness. A stained mattress lay in the corner like a dead animal. Chains clinked with every movement from the corridor outside. I curled on the mattress, staring up at the dripping ceiling, hearing screams echo through the halls, men being beaten, men laughing at pain, men losing their minds. Days bled together into a nightmare that never paused. The guards treated us like vermin. A misstep meant a beating. Some enjoyed it too much. The slap of a baton against flesh, the crunch of bone, the laughter that followed. They didn't need reasons. They only needed boredom. The inmates were worse. We were thrown together like wolves in a pit, and they smelled weakness. Each day I fought not to be swallowed whole. Eyes followed me when I walked through the yard. Hands reached for me in the corridors. More than once, fists broke against my ribs until I spit blood. I whispered to myself that I was innocent, that someday someone would believe me. I clung to that thought like a lifeboat in a storm, but every appeal I made was denied. Every letter I wrote came back unopened. My lawyer stopped visiting. My family stopped calling. One day, my wife's letter reached me. It was short, trembling. She said neighbors spat at her when she went to the market. Our daughter cried herself to sleep, calling me a killer. She begged me never to contact them again. That night, something in me cracked. Nights were the worst. Cold floor beneath me, the stench of sweat and blood soaking into my nose. The cries of prisoners rang out, some pleading for mercy, some laughing like demons, some whispering prayers into the void. It wasn't just their sounds that tormented me. After weeks without hope, I began to hear other things, whispers in the dark, whispers that didn't come from the cells. The first time, I was lying awake, staring into the black, when a low voice breathed my name. Arif. My blood froze. I thought it was a trick, shouted for silence, but only laughter answered me. Still, in that laughter, I heard something else underneath, like a hiss moving along the walls. The next night it returned, softer this time. You don't belong here. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the voice was inside me, a crawling presence in the dark corner of my cell. When I lifted my head, I swore I saw a figure crouched there, pale and thin, watching me with hollow eyes. Whenever the guards passed, the figure faded, but in the silence, it returned. Weeks passed. I stopped eating. The other inmates avoided me now, whispering that I talked to shadows, that I laughed when no one was near. I didn't remember laughing, but my throat hurt, as if I'd been screaming in my sleep. The voice grew clearer with each passing night. I asked it if I was going mad. It whispered back, "No, madness is mercy. This is eternity." I begged it to leave me, but it never did. It told me truths I didn't want to hear, that my wife would never let me see my daughter again, that even if I escaped the walls, I would still be a prisoner of shame. It promised me freedom. Not through release, not through justice, only through surrender. On the last night, when the chains rattled and the wails rose again, I sat in the dark and listened. The figure unfolded itself from the corner, tall now, stretching, its bones cracking like stones splitting underground. It leaned close, its breath colder than the concrete floor. "Let me in," it whispered. And I did. Now, they say I never sleep. They say when guards walk past my cell, they hear two voices murmuring, one mine, the other inhuman. The inmates shy away from me, and the guards won't look me in the eye, but I am no longer afraid. Stonehouse was never just a prison. It's a feeding ground, a place that chews hope, swallows innocence, and spits out hollow men. I was innocent when I came here. But innocence has no meaning in the dark. Only the whispers do. And the whispers have claimed me. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror,